Slavery and its history often feels like a taboo topic these days. It is something many people avoid talking about now. Still, we cannot ignore that slavery existed in different forms across many ethnic groups and countries. A lot of these stories are often forgotten or even deliberately hidden today. On Dark Slavery Stories, we will explore the true story of the white slave trade. The history of slavery is far more complex than what is usually told.
Were you aware that North Africa captured up to 1.25 million white slaves?
Did you know that 1/5 of the 1797 U.S. government budget went toward paying tribute to North African Muslim states to free American captives and stop their enslavement? The Ottoman Empire enslaved millions of Europeans. Also, in ancient times, the word thrall in the Anglo-Saxon language was used to mean both slave and person because slavery was so common. Owning and trading slaves was a practice found all over the world. It is important to face these facts and rethink how we view history and its effects. The evil of slavery touched people in almost every culture, region, and time period. While the word slave often brings up the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, enslaving people was common in both ancient and more recent times, and it still exists today. Right now, estimates say between 38 million and 46 million people live in modern slavery, showing this cruel practice continues. Most public attention and criticism has focused on the terrible African slave trade from the 16th to 19th centuries. Sadly, a similar horrible trade in Barbary slaves happened at the same time in the Mediterranean area. This hidden trade involved Barbary corsairs, who are believed to have enslaved up to 1.25 million Europeans. These people, now known as the white slaves of Barbary, suffered lives just as miserable as those of African slaves. The Barbary slaves were people captured and enslaved by Barbary pirates who operated in the Mediterranean Sea and along the North African coast between the 16th and 19th centuries. These pirates, mostly from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, attacked ships from Europe and the Americas, plus coastal towns and villages, to take goods and captives for slavery. The Barbary pirates captured people from many different ethnic and religious groups, including Europeans, Africans, and Middle Easterners. Some of the best-known examples were Europeans from places like Italy, Spain, and Ireland taken while sailing or living near the Mediterranean coast. The corsairs did not limit themselves to ships and sailors. They often raided coastal settlements in several European countries, such as Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, England, Ireland, the Netherlands, and even as far as Iceland. These attacks happened by landing on unprotected beaches and creeping into villages at night to seize victims. One especially awful attack occurred in 1631, when almost everyone in the Irish village of Baltimore was taken by the corsairs. The fear from such raids caused widespread panic in coastal areas, and many towns were nearly emptied as people fled. The corsair raids hurt the social and economic growth of Mediterranean coastal regions and affected their cultural heritage. The constant danger of capture led many to leave their homes and move inland, leaving towns and villages empty and open to more attacks. The impact went beyond the Mediterranean. Coastal communities in other parts of Europe felt it too, and the piracy threat led to stronger coastal defenses and naval patrols to guard ships and towns. The Barbary corsairs' raid on the coastal village of Baltimore in Ireland is seen as one of the most cruel acts by these pirates. In the early hours of June 20th, 1631, more than 200 corsairs reached the shores of Baltimore, carrying weapons like muskets, iron bars, and burning sticks. The corsairs quietly approached the cottages and homes along the shore and in the main village. They waited outside the doors until a signal, then rushed in, grabbing the sleeping people. In total, 107 men, women, and children were dragged to the ships and carried back to Algiers. When they arrived, the Baltimore residents were put in slave pens, chained, almost naked, and shown to possible buyers. Men were usually forced into hard labor, while women were often taken as concubines. Children were frequently raised as Muslims and added to the slave units in the Ottoman army. During the 13th and 14th centuries, the Mediterranean was controlled by Christian pirates, mostly from Catalonia and Sicily, who threatened merchants at sea. Things changed in the 15th century as the Ottoman Empire grew, leading to the rise of Barbary corsairs as a major danger to Christian ships. By the 16th century, the Barbary corsairs had become a strong force, attacking ships from powers like Venice, Spain, and France. Then, in the early 17th century, European pirates joined in, bringing better sailing and shipbuilding skills. This let the Barbary corsairs expand into the Atlantic Ocean and target ships from England, Ireland, Portugal, and the Netherlands. The usual story about the Barbary slave trade shows Muslim corsairs capturing white Christian victims. But this view is too simple and does not show the full truth. The corsairs were not driven only by race or religion. Slaves in Barbary came from all races and faiths, including black, brown, white, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Jewish, or Muslim. Also, the corsairs were not only Muslim. English privateers and Dutch captains joined the slave trade too, taking advantage of the unstable politics where alliances shifted fast. Historian Robert Davis, author of Christian Slaves, Muslim Masters, White Slavery in the Mediterranean, the Barbary Coast, and Italy, points out that the idea slavery was always based on race is wrong. In Barbary, slavery was driven by the need for labor and by capturing people through piracy, not just race. Davis also says the history of white slavery has been ignored or downplayed by scholars who prefer to see Europeans only as colonial oppressors rather than as slavery victims. This view may be debated, but it shows the Barbary slave trade was complex and needs a more balanced understanding. The Barbary slave trade was a cruel and dehumanizing system that treated captured people terribly. Many slaves died during the long journey to North Africa from disease, hunger, and lack of water. Those who survived reached the slave markets, where they were displayed for buyers to examine before being sold at auction. Once bought, slaves worked in different roles based on gender and strength. Men often did heavy manual labor like quarrying or construction. Women handled domestic tasks or sexual servitude. At night, slaves were locked in bagnios, overcrowded, extremely hot places. Perhaps the worst fate for a Barbary slave was rowing galleys. Rowers were chained to their benches and never allowed to leave. They ate, slept, and relieved themselves in the same spot, sometimes for months or years. Overseers whipped them to keep rowing, and anyone not working hard enough faced brutal punishment. The whole system was built to take away a person's humanity, turning them into property to buy and sell. The conditions were inhumane, and the suffering was enormous. As the 17th century ended, Barbary pirate power started to weaken as European navies grew stronger and fought back against attacks on merchant ships. But it was not until the 19th century that real coordinated action stopped the pirates. The United States and some European countries took stronger steps against the Barbary pirates. Algiers, the main base, was bombarded many times by the French, Spanish, and Americans. The Anglo-Dutch raid on Algiers in 1816 was especially important. It forced the corsairs to agree to terms that ended the enslavement of Christians. Still, the trade in non-European slaves continued for a while. After these actions, piracy incidents became rare. The British raided Algiers again in 1824, and France invaded Algiers in 1830, making it a colony. Tunisia fell under French control in 1881, and Tripoli came under Italian rule after the 1911 Italo-Turkish War. Slavery on the Barbary coast finally ended only when European governments passed laws to free slaves. The trade, which had lasted centuries, officially stopped, and the remaining slaves gained freedom. This was a big step in the fight against slavery and for human rights. Today, the memory of the Barbary slaves reminds us of the horrors of slavery and why we must keep working to end it completely. That's it for today's video. If you learned something new, please like and subscribe. We will see you next time for more history in minutes.